Coffee is happiness in a cup. I would argue that you can't be happy and dislike coffee. But what is coffee? It's just a plant. It's a bean. It's picked, roasted in an oven, crushed up, and then some water run through it, right? So how do we get this happiness from this plant? We're going to take a trip to Ellensburg today to watch some of this process, to see how we can take this simple bean, put it in an oven and crush it, and get happiness in a cup. Let's go. In central Washington, there is a 19th century Victorian farmhouse where Candace Wetzel has been carving out her share of the coffee market in Ellensburg, a town that has a plethora of coffee shops but only a few roasters. In just 5 years, she has been able to gain accounts all over Kittitas County and has been a fixture in the Ellensburg Farmers Market where she sells beans, drip, and nitro cold brew. Inspired by memories of her grandmother making coffee, Candace has made this venture a family affair, enlisting the help of her husband Steve and her children who came of age on an alpaca and lavender farm, with a roasting company only a few steps away. It is not unusual to see various members of the family under the tent at the farmer's market on Saturday. But how much of this is business and how much of it is passion? How much work are we talking about here? According to Candace, it starts with a lot of research. Talking to Candy, I realized there's a lot of things that you have to consider when you're roasting coffee. What about the beans and where they come from? What if a bean comes from Africa versus a bean that comes from South America or Mexico? How does that impact the taste? And what about all these tasting notes that I keep hearing about, like lemon and chocolate, cedar, flowers? What does all this have to do with coffee?
People ask me, they're a little confused about what they like or what's what. I start asking them, do you like milk chocolate versus dark chocolate? And then that gives me a pretty good indication of where, what blend I can kind of steer them towards. So everyone's like, well, I like a dark roast. Well, if I'm roasting it to second crack, all of my blends are a dark roast. And that's why I ask them, do you like dark chocolate versus milk chocolate? And they're like, well, I don't really like chocolate. And I was like, oh, okay. So then I would point them towards like my blue Beetle blend, which doesn't have chocolate notes in it at all. It's more of a mellow kind of, just a real mellow in the cup, or a Colombian coffee. That's the only single origin I have. But if they say, oh, I like something that, it's really dark. And then I like a Sumatra roasted dark, and that's a real dark chocolatey notes. And then I can point them towards that blend.
The roaster is similar to a gas oven. Gas goes in, it is lit by a pilot light, it gets to temperature and cooks whatever is in the rotating drum. Coffee is roasted at 430 to 440 degrees depending on volume. It starts by taking the moisture out, which according to Candace takes about 9 to 11 minutes. So much moisture is removed, in fact, that she has to put in an extra pound of raw beans for every 5 pounds of roasted beans she hopes to sell. This process seems to require a lot of precision. It is definitely feeling more like a craft and less like an industrial process at this point.
It's about being creative, and it's not working with watercolors or playing a guitar, but it's more about everything from my brand to the blends that I came up with, that makes it very satisfying.
I can already tell that geography, chemistry, economics, and marketing are all intersecting here. And then there is the glossary of terms, such as the first and second crack when you're roasting, French roast, tasting notes, acidity, in the cup, etc. But Wetzel draws a familiar comparison. She says it is not that much different than baking. Like baking, there is an emphasis on chemistry and timing, and the quality of the product is only as good as the quality of its ingredients. And this is why Country Crow has to make sure that the product, raw or roasted, is bought from the right place and stored properly, as well as being roasted to perfection. This ensures that the quality raw bean that she purchases results in a rich cup for her customers to drink. But what is puzzling to both of us is why women are underrepresented in the industry. It is common to see women as baristas, But Wetzel says that that is not the case in the roasting industry. She, being the mother of 3 girls and a boy, commented on that observation as it relates to her own family.
Yeah, my youngest son, he's the only one. I've got 3 girls. There's not a lot of female roasters out there.
At the perfect time, Wetzel dumps the Blue Beetle blend into the agitator to cool. If this is not done with precision, the bean will either be too light or too dark. According to Wetzel, customers on this side of the Cascades prefer dark roasts, while customers on the west side of the mountains are more likely to drink the more complex, lighter roast. She claims that once a roast gets to the second crack, some of the flavor can be lost. And by the way, the first and second crack that you keep hearing about, that refers to the sound the bean makes during the roasting process. The bean first dries, then it loses its chaff, then it begins to crack. And at this point, the bean begins to roast very quickly and must be taken out for a light or medium roast. If the bean stays in the drum any longer, they will crack a second time with a more noticeable pop. The beans can then be removed for a dark roast. Wetzel uses a specially lined bag that has a valve built into it. She says that even though this type of bag costs more, it ensures that the freshly roasted beans will properly vent as they release gases during the cool down period. The lining ensures that the beans will last up to 90 days if the bag is properly sealed.
So why does coffee bring us so much pleasure? Is it just the taste? Is it the caffeine? Or is it something more than that? People invest a lot of time and energy into this drink, all the way down the line, every process. And it's more than just a job, it's a craft. It's someone investing their time and energy and their creativity into a product that we can purchase thousands of miles away. Thanks for watching.